Bienvenidos. We are very excited to have everyone here today. I'm Carly Foster, and you're also joined by many other members of the project team, Resilient Northeastern New Jersey project team, who will introduce themselves shortly. Just a quick note on translation services tonight. We have American Sign Language interpretation. We will spotlight our interpreter, but please feel free to also pin the interpreter or other speakers at will. And if you don't see the closed captioning and would like to, please opt in by clicking closed captioning on the screen. And Megan is also going to drop in the chat instructions for folks to reach the Spanish translation. As everyone gets settled in, please take a moment to update your name by hovering over your name in the participant window. Click More and rename, provide your name if desired, city, so we know where you're from. And if you're watching over live stream and would like to engage directly in the meeting, I'm going to share the website on the next slide. We also want to hear about how you heard about the meeting tonight. And then the link to join the meeting directly from the live stream is https://tinyurl.com/NENJ-MTG-4. And we will share this link multiple times in case you'd like to join. So let's get started. We have some quick housekeeping items. So to ensure that we limit background noise, please remain on mute when you're not speaking. And if you joined by dialing in, you can mute and unmute yourself. I'd like to introduce Drew Curtis from Ironbound to share with us the community guidelines.
Hey, good evening, y'all. My name is Drew Curtis. I get to work with Ironbound Community Corporation and the steering committee on this planning project. Just wanted to go over some quick guidelines to guide our conversation tonight to make sure we have as good a conversation as possible too. So as Carly said, if you're not speaking, urge you to remain on mute in case there's any background noise that happens. And when we're in this main session for the beginning of the meeting, you can put any questions or comments you have in the chat. But we also ask you to turn off your video when you're not speaking. This makes it easier for ASL accessibility. But when we get to the breakouts, it will be more of a conversation focus, so please feel free to turn your cameras on. And we use what we call one mic, making sure one person is speaking at the time. Everyone else can remain muted. And if you need to speak, you can either type the word stack into the chat box, or you can raise your hand using the feature on Zoom. Please acknowledge everyone's voice here and their time. If you're someone who speaks frequently, please consider stepping back and allowing others to speak too. And also, the opposite holds true. If you don't speak that often during meetings like this, please, we urge you to step up and make your voice heard. And when you do speak, speak from your own experience, use I statements, and just be respectful of everyone here tonight too. And then really, most importantly, have fun. Let's all get as much as we can out of this conversation. I know the first meeting we had today was really good. I'm looking forward to just as good a conversation this evening. With that, back to you, Carly.
Thanks a lot, Drew. So the meeting today is going to happen in two parts. We have a short upfront presentation that'll be about 30 minutes, and then we'll have breakouts that will deep dive into some specific solutions that are being explored for the plan. And so as Drew mentioned, please respond in the upfront presentation through the chat, and we will respond to your questions directly. And this meeting is recorded, so we will post the recording to the website and to YouTube, and we will be live streaming this upfront meeting as well as one of the breakouts. We live streamed a different breakout earlier today, and the meeting will close in the breakout. Recordings will be available in both English and Spanish. So during these upfront presentation, we want to share with you what we've been up to, where we're at with the project, and also share with you how your feedback has directly changed our approach to the project. We'll preview some maps from the flood models that we've been talking about. And even though in our next meeting, we'll talk about the quantitative risk assessment. We'll also share with you some of the solutions that are being explored as both a result of the feedback that you've given us so far and the technical analysis that has been completed to this point. What we're sharing today is very much a work in progress. It's not the plan. We don't yet have costs. It's different things that we're looking at, and we want to check in and show you where we're at before we get too far. And have you let us know, have we been listening? Are we on the right track? What do you want to make sure moves forward? That's really important. What is maybe not as important to you? And are we missing anything? Also, any questions that you have, we want to make sure that we're answering. And when the time is right, we'll make sure that you know how to access the 2 rooms. The physical solutions breakout will stay in this room. And those that are really interested in talking about the more non-physical solutions like outreach and policy and different programs that might be developed, that will be, you guys will move into that room. And then you can move back and forth if you'd like, but if you want to experience the whole other breakout, you'll need to listen to the recording from a little bit earlier today. And that live stream is currently available on Facebook, but we'll also post the recording later on YouTube, as I mentioned. So what is this all about? Resilient Northeastern New Jersey is a partnership between Jersey City, Newark, Hoboken, Bayonne, Hudson County, and also the community-based organizations of Ironbound Community Corporation and Hope's Community Assistance Partnership. The purpose is to develop a regional action plan to address flood risk, but we're also looking at other hazards now because of feedback that we've gotten. And I'll say more about that in a minute. And representatives of each of these entities sit on the project steering committee. The program is administered through the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, and it's also guided by a community advisory council. And that council is made up of residents from each municipality, and many of whom, or some of whom we have here tonight. I've seen some of you in the participants list. And so they are a paid part of the project team, and the consultant support consists of an interdisciplinary team of engineers, scientists, planners from the organizations listed below. And engagement, as you'll see through this presentation, is a really critical element of this whole program. So I'm going to take a moment to introduce members of the region team, and I'd like to start with Nick Angarone, our State Resilience Officer, to say a few words.
Thanks, Carly. Good evening, everybody. I'm Nick Angarone. I'm New Jersey's Chief Resilience Officer. I also manage the DEP Bureau of Climate Resilience Planning, which was the designer and sponsor of the program. I'm really happy to be with you all tonight to talk about the Resilient NJ Northeastern New Jersey project. I want to thank you all for coming. It's not often that I get to participate in meetings like this anymore. And get to hear from you, from input from all our communities. So I want to be quick and allow us to get to that part of the meeting. How we plan and respond to the impacts of climate change, whether they be sea level rise or coastal flooding or the extreme precipitation events that we all experienced in September from Ida. How we begin to address them now, the decisions that we make now are going to determine the success, the sustainability, the safety, the resilience of our communities in the future. This program, the Resilient NJ program, the Northeastern and the 3 other projects we have around the state, they are the preeminent program in New Jersey for how we do that, how we respond to climate change. What happens here is going to serve as a model for many of the community resilience planning projects going forward. the community-driven aspect of this project is essential to its success. It's a principle that we really want to build into every aspect of our work. It's something that we want to emulate statewide, and it's really great that you're here. I'll just finish saying, you guys, you got a great team. You're really lucky to have the participation and engagement of your municipalities, of your municipal representatives. You should appreciate and take pride in that. It's not something that we see in every community around the state. And I want to thank Carly and the rest of the consultant team and all of you for coming tonight. This is great. Really excited about it, and I'll stop talking now so we can get into the community engagement part. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Nick. And so now I'm going to introduce the different members of the steering committee and the community advisory council that are here tonight. And so when I say your name, if you could just say hi to everybody with your role. I'll start with Yasmin Passar from Hoboken.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Yasmin Passar. I am an environmental planner and project manager with the City of Hoboken. It's a pleasure to be with you all this evening. Thank you for having me.
And you all met Drew a moment ago. Drew is with Ironbound Community Corporation, as on our steering committee. And Sue from Bayonne.
Hi, I'm Sue Mack. I'm the city planner. I just want to thank everybody for coming, and especially my my CAC members from Bayonne. Thank you so much.
And I see Jim with our Community Advisory Council. You're on mute, Jim.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jim Young. I'm also with the South Ward Environmental Alliance. I'm glad to be part of this project, and glad everyone is out today, participating in this project. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. And Ahmed, also from our Community Advisory Council.
Hey everyone, my name is Ahmed. I'm from Bayonne. I'm here to learn practical practice to build resiliency and hope to communicate it back to the community.
And we've got Emily Goldstein here from NJDEP.
Good evening, everyone. As Carly just said, my name is Emily Goldstein. I'm a planner with NJDEP and the Bureau of Climate Resilience Planning, and I am the assistant project lead for this program. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight.
And Leisha with our Community Advisory Council.
Hi, I'm Lisha Smyrda. This is Dan Smyrda. We're here from the Bayonne Water Guardians. Happy to be participating.
Wonderful. And Meg Kavanaugh from NJDEP.
Hi, everyone. I'm Meg Kavanaugh. I'm also a planner in DEP's Bureau of Climate Resilience Planning, and I'm the state level coordinator for this region. Happy to be here.
And Lindsay Sigmund from Jersey City.
Hi, everyone. Lindsay Sigmund, Jersey City's Division of City Planning. I'm the environmental planner for the city. Looking forward to this discussion tonight and hearing your feedback, and thank you for joining.
And we've got Kevin Force from Hudson County.
Thanks, Carly. Hi, I'm Kevin Force. I'm a principal planner with Hudson County Planning. And thank you so much for joining us, everyone, this evening. I'm really looking forward to talking about some potential solutions for flooding issues in our region.
Great. And Natalie Augusto Filion from Newark.
Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Augusto Filion. I'm grateful to be here. I would be remiss if I didn't take a quick second to let you all know that we run a mini grants program focused on neighborhood scale beautification projects called Love Your Block. I will drop it in the chat, drop the information in the chat. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Let's take a moment to switch translators.
Sure.
All done. Thank you.
All right. Alan Miller from NJDEP is on the line.
Hey all, I'm Alan Miller, New Jersey DEP. I'm in the New Jersey's Community Collaborative Initiative Program, and I work with both Bayonne and Jersey City.
I see we're also joined by John Armstrong tonight from Bayonne, who was a big player in developing the some funding applications that we recently put through Resilient New Jersey, and we'll talk about those in a little bit.
Yes, hello everybody. It's nice to be in touch with everybody once again. Looking forward to this meeting as well. So thanks, Carly, and thank everybody for having me along. Thank you.
And I see a bunch of other familiar faces from previous meetings and who have been really engaged in the project. So very glad to see you and welcome. We're looking forward to this meeting tonight. I also want to take a moment to thank our translators for ASL and Spanish. It is hard work keeping up with a meeting like this, and they do wonderful, wonderful work. So when we initially started planning this project, we were looking at three big types of actions that might be included. Physical solutions, nature-based solutions are included in that. Recommended changes to policies and governance, outreach and education and capacity building. But based on feedback that we have received from you all, we're also looking at two other types of solutions. That includes service and program development, which we'll also be talking about today, and also emergency response and preparedness related actions. Our next meeting will cover those. There's already a lot of work happening in Northeastern New Jersey. Many of you on the call are involved in that good work. And I think this program is a lot like needle and thread, tying initiatives and stakeholders at various levels together, and also identifying ways to work to fill in the gaps. So we have to think carefully about the scale at which a solution might be applied. Recommendations could apply to specific study areas or neighborhoods. We've broken down the region into 13 of them. Actions that might be taken at the municipal level, like land use policy changes at the region level, or even state and federal. And so there are agencies and stakeholders with the power to affect flood risk at all of these scales. And so we'll want to keep that in mind as we have our conversation tonight. So where are we? The project kicked off last spring, and we published our About Our Region report, which really outlines the context within which we're working. And in right at Halloween, actually, we published our Vision and Priorities report. And both of these reports are open for comments. Your feedback on them is really important to help drive the project. The Vision and Priorities report is like the light in the distance that guides the decisions that are made. So Megan's dropping the links to those in the chat. And right now we'll be talking about sort of different solutions that are being explored. And then we're looking at publishing the final action plan sometime in late spring. There's also this really interesting feature to this overall program that we call Phase 2 implementation. And so as things float to the top through this process, we really like to plan on our feet. There are things that we can take action on and run with, and we'll talk about some of those in a few minutes. So there's some of those things have been happening in parallel. This is a quick overview of the engagement that we've completed to date. This is really just examples of the feedback that has been used to produce the Vision and Priorities report, as well as taking us to where we're at right now with the scenarios. Most materials we've developed to date are translated into Spanish. We also have flyers, survey, and art sheets that have been translated into 10 languages that were prioritized for this region. It's a very diverse, incredibly diverse region. We've also visited each community, met with residents and officials to talk about challenges and opportunities. This is our fourth region-wide community meeting. We use the community meetings to kind of bookend milestones or really check in and make sure that we're on the right track. But just about weekly, we're also having interviews, small group meetings, post-IDA. We had a community forum in Newark to talk about those impacts. And we're always looking for ways to do better at engagement. You know, we've been doing a lot of work but we know that it's not enough. And so if you have feedback about things that we can do differently or what you'd like to see, please feel free to drop it in the chat. We take that very seriously and we plan our engagement in waves. So we pivot when we need to. On top of meetings, there are a lot of different ways for you to continue to engage with us and stay engaged in the project on a time frame that works for you. You know, if these meetings and the timing for them doesn't work, then you know, there's many other ways to engage. And so I'm asking Megan to drop these into the chat so that you can take them down and have them available to you. So just to kind of drive home the importance of engagement and how it has affected the project, I'm going to share with you a couple examples of ways that the feedback we've gotten from the communities in the region has changed or driven project changes so far. These are just a few examples. So in our first meeting, we got feedback that a plan is not enough. You know, people wanted to see real projects and they want to see things moving forward. So as a result, we got to work on some important projects that we could get moving based on our understanding of flood risk and the priorities that have been put forward. And so we developed and submitted 4 funding applications to FEMA in partnership with NJDEP, with the New Jersey Office of Emergency Management, the region team, and other stakeholders. And Hoboken also submitted a 5th for the expansion of their resilience park. These projects together will reduce risk to hundreds of people. And if they are successful, the FEMA will cover 75% of the cost. If we aren't successful with that program, and we'll find out about it this summer, we developed enough documentation in the form of cost estimates, scopes of work, the benefit cost analysis, and all associated sort of paperwork that we could sort of plug and chug with other funding programs. So we're really hoping to see these move forward. And we'll talk about one of these in a little bit more detail in the non-physical breakout group. Is this in the way? Sorry. Another bit of feedback we received early on was, you know, why are you guys only looking at flooding? We have other concerns in the region. And we heard that and we agree. And so we're also looking at all climate hazards. Now, we can't look at everything region-wide that might affect resilience, but we can look at other climate-related hazards. And so some of the things that have floated to the top are heat and groundwater rise. We've had a lot of feedback about concerns about air quality. And so beginning this month, we are doing an investigation to understand, you know, which climate hazards are most likely to affect the region most severely. What do those effects look like? What are their implications? And what do we do about it? And how do we kind of integrate that into everything that we're doing around flood risk and what additional actions might be needed? Some community members in the region have flooded 5 times last year, and Hurricane Ida also sort of demonstrated the relationship between emergency preparedness, response, and communications and near and long-term risk and resilience. So we heard from you that we need to bring the emergency management community to the table as stakeholders in the process, and we need to develop recommendations related to emergency response and preparedness. And we've gathered a lot of feedback from the community about that, but we're beginning this month, we're engaging the emergency management community. We needed to wait a little bit because so many of them were knee deep in Ida recovery, but now is a good time for us to be having those conversations more deeply, and we'll have an update for you on that during our next meeting. So that's just a couple of the things that we're doing, and I think you'll hear about more of those in the breakout. So I'm going to turn it over now to Russ to tell us a little bit about flood hazards in the region and some new models that have been developed.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Carly. So my name is Russ Dudley. I am a water resources engineer with Arcadis. I work closely with Carly and the rest of the team on the Resilient New Jersey project, specifically looking at scenario development. It's really important for us to think about If you can advance the slide, Carly. Perfect. Think about flooding from a variety of different sources. We're looking at flooding holistically, but it comes at us from different angles. And so Ida, as was mentioned by Carly earlier, is a really important one for us to reference, as heavy rainstorms are a primary contributor to flooding throughout the region. But we also have to pay particular attention to tidal flooding and coastal storms, thinking about Sandy in the not so distant past and what that's going to look like in terms of vulnerability moving forward. So New Jersey DEP has done a fairly extensive modeling effort for us to assist in this project. And it really helps us to quantify and identify those areas that we need to focus on as we develop our actions and combine them into scenarios. Let's start by looking at the rainfall flooding. This is a map from the model results looking at both current and future rainfall flooding events. This is oriented around the 24-hour 1% annual chance rainfall event. And that statistic is really important for us because we can reference that as an event that we expect to happen once every 100 years. It is a large scale event with a significant amount of rainfall that occurs over a short period of just one day. And so this is going to cause quite a bit of flooding, as you can see on this map. The light blue is the present day flooding. And you might see some areas where that's extended in the future. We have looked at a 2070 condition as well that includes sea level rise as well as a 10% increase in the rainfall associated with that event. Where you don't see a lot of differences in the extents of that flooding, what's really important is looking at the difference in depths. And so this is what's really going to drive a lot of our impacts, and it helps orient our solutions. Rainfall flooding is not the only flooding of concern for us, and we want to look at the coastal inundation as well. So here you can see the Sandy storm surge, as well as a projected Sandy storm with sea level rise that we would anticipate in the future. This gives us great context on what has happened in the past, as well as kind of the extent of what a coastal storm could do to our region. And you can see that has major impacts on Hoboken, Jersey City, Bayonne, and Newark.
Just a quick comment before we move on to the next one. The 1% annual chance, although a lot of folks refer to it as the 100-year storm, it can happen multiple times in 100 years. You know, there's I think folks could say Irene and Ida were both, you know, sort of in that vicinity or met or exceeded. And you can have the same thing happen year after year. It's really like flipping a coin.
That's right. That's right. Thanks, Carly.
Oops, I danced too fast. Sorry. There you go.
Let's just pause for a moment to switch translators. All right, we're all set. Thank you.
And then finally, we look at conditions just under tidal variations. And this can be sunny day flooding. This is flooding that's not necessarily, that's not associated with any storm event, and just due to those tidal variations. We already know that as a coastal communities here, that we are greatly dependent upon these coastal areas. That's going to become a lot more challenging in the future with sea level rise. And so here you'll note that there are high tide markings along the coastline, but we also anticipate that there are going to be higher king tides or monthly tides that we'll see that make these areas potentially unusable on a frequent basis. A particular note here too is the low-lying areas that would be subjected to inundation. These are cut off from the coastline, but they are also at a low elevation. It's really important for us to look at the impacts of groundwater changes due to sea level rise as well. And properties within these these low-lying areas, as well as the potential solutions that we have within our toolbox, will change pretty drastically based on that groundwater. And I'll turn it back over to Carly.
Thanks, Russ. And there's a good question in the chat that if you have a chance, you can respond to. So just one more section to get through before we dive into the breakouts. We want to share a little bit about what you'll see in the breakout. First, you'll hear us talk a lot about scenarios, and scenarios can have different meanings. Sometimes we might be referring to risks. Sometimes, you know, we're referring to different types of solutions. And in the context of Resilient New Jersey, we're talking specifically about solution scenarios. I also want to clarify that when we talk about scenarios, we're really kind of talking about maybe like different sections of a buffet. These aren't alternatives that you have to choose from. They could potentially build on one another. It's really a framing tool for us to understand and demonstrate the different forks in the road that might help us decide, you know, which way we might want to go. We talk about them as sort of departure points. So a little bit about our scenario development process. You know, in the first 3 meetings that we sort of covered milestones in summer and fall, we worked on developing the vision and priorities. We also worked on sort of making sure that we fully understood all of the projects that are being planned or underway. And we talked a lot about risks and the ways that people are experiencing flooding in the region already, as well as different tools in our toolbox. We published actually a draft toolbox with the vision and priorities report. Now where we're at is we're working on sort of these scenarios, and we're framing them around 3 different key departure points, which we'll talk about more in the breakouts. But, you know, one of the ways that's really helpful to talk about solutions is in line with how complex they are and how much coordination might be required to get them done. And so scenario 1, we'll be talking a lot about sort of what things can be done sort of by the municipalities on their own. Engagement with affected stakeholders would be relevant across all 3 of these scenarios. But, you know, what could the municipalities drive by themselves? Scenario 2 is what are the kinds of things that we have shared leadership requirements, you know, where the private sector and community-based organizations and maybe even different state agencies might need to be involved. And then scenario 3 is what are the bigger, more complex things that we might require regionally coordinated leadership to get done. So, and these are all funding agnostic, because some things that a municipality could get done on their own might require a lot of funding. So for example, if they were doing a flood protection barrier along publicly owned property, that's something that the city could coordinate, but they would require sort of a lot of funding for that. And so then in our future meetings, in community meeting number 5, we'll bring back sort of a draft action plan based on the feedback that you're providing us today, and a lot of engagement that's going to take place in March. And then we'll want to check in and make sure that we're on the right path. We'll also bring the results of the quantitative risk assessment back to you in our next meeting. So some of our next steps, we're going to embark on that emergency management community engagement that we talked about, continued infrastructure meetings. So it's really important for us to engage folks that might be required to actually implement some of the ideas that are floating up, make sure that, you know, we're thinking things through all the way. We're going to have some city specific meetings in March to deep dive on potential solutions in each of the study areas. Even deeper than we're going to get into today. We'll be publishing a video series in May, and we are undertaking some youth engagement, and Drew will talk more about this in the non-physical solutions breakout. We'll be cost estimating these scenarios and the different actions, completing the all hazards and assessment, and we'll be working on getting out the draft risk assessment in March. And like I said, we'll have our next community-wide meeting in the spring. And so while Megan gets these breakouts set up, we'll take, oh, I need to edit this. The physical and nature-based solutions is actually going to stay here, and the non-physical solutions are going to be moving. So this is, just imagine that this is switched. And the physical and nature-based solutions that will be staying in this room will cover green infrastructure, drainage, and coastal solutions. You'll talk about those sort of conceptually, and then dive into a Miro board where you'll look at maps and ideas of where they should go. And then the non-physical solutions will be moving, and we'll be talking about outreach, education, and capacity building, policy and governance, and service and program development solutions. So I'll just look and see if there's any questions while Megan gets those breakouts set up. And you can move on your own between the different breakout rooms. If you want to switch at any point in time and you don't know how to move yourself, you can just put in the chat and we'll move you.
Breakout rooms are ready to go. Should I open them?
I'm looking to see if there's any other. It looks like most of the questions got addressed in the chat. So, all right, I think we're ready. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say one other thing. There was a question about data on flooding from past events. And that is something that we've been trying to do through this project, getting community data and incorporating it into our understanding of what flooding looks like. So a few of the cities that are participating have already created flood reporters on their websites to collect flood reports during storm events. And in our initial visioning process, we've been asking questions about where people experience flooding and using that to validate the flood models that we're looking at.
Yep. And there's a lot of info on our website too, that you can see what we've received so far.
Could I ask one question?
Sure.
Sorry, I had put it in the chat, but just before we lose you, is this group or could someone chat if there are resources for folks who have been impacted by Hurricane Ida for funding resources for those of us who are rebuilding? There was sort of a flurry of FEMA related information right after the storm, but I haven't seen anything recently at the state or Hudson County level.
Yeah, we can, maybe you can private message your email address and we can share our last community meeting. We actually had a lot of information about resources available, and we can share some of those with you. Which municipality are you with?
Hudson County. I'm in Hoboken.
You're in Hoboken. Okay. All right. And so we can also get you connected with Hoboken.
Great. Thanks.
No problem. Okay. I think we're ready to move.
All right, I'm going to open them. And if anyone has issues getting into the non-physical room, which is the other breakout room, you can just message Resilient New Jersey in the chat. Thanks.